Hi, everybody, and welcome to another conversation that will eventually make it to my podcast, Circle Up and Get Real. The premise for the podcast is that when you find your people, you want to hang out with them. I always think about sitting around a fire and talking about things that matter with people who matter. And that's what the podcast is all about. And sometimes the conversations that I have in my head come from conversations I've had in real life with people. And today I want to share some of the ahas that I had yesterday during the Enlightened Leadership Lab, which happens on Mondays from 3 to 4:30 Central. It's a place where people who are leaders, or I guess they are leaders, and leader in the fact that they want to go first in whatever they're working on. It doesn't mean they have a title, a tenure, position. None of that matters in the Enlightened Leadership Lab. It's a gathering of like-minded and like-hearted others who are willing to have conversations that maybe they don't necessarily have in other parts of their lives. And these can be entrepreneurs, these can be employees, these can be retirees. I mean, it doesn't even matter what you do in the Enlightened Leadership Lab. It matters who you are and what you bring in your listening. We had a lot of ahas yesterday, and so I wanted to just share a couple of them for this podcast. As always, if you're watching, thank you. I see a couple of people are watching. If you want to participate by putting a comment here, you can absolutely do that, and I will address it live as I can. If you are watching later, please feel free to do the same thing. Share your comments. I watch very carefully, and I will make sure that I address the comments, because that's what I know I'm all about, is bringing people together in connection, communication, and collaboration. So with that, I'm going to do the countdown and we'll do the podcast, okay? 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real. This is a place where it's safe to explore some ideas that you might not have another place to do that. And on this podcast, I usually have interviews, but once in a while I don't, and it ends up me, being just me, having a conversation about something that has grabbed my attention over the time from the last podcast episode. So today I want to share with you some ideas that came to me yesterday in the Enlightened Leadership Lab, which is a space that I co-host with Chris Angel. And we have members there who are willing to go first in their thought processes and hold space for each other to explore and examine some of those ideas that come to them. And yesterday we were talking about your calling. Your calling. Like, what is it that I'm here to provide to the world? What am I here to do? And many people have had that thought, I suppose, over their lifetimes. Like, what's the point? What am I here to do? What is my mission? What is my destiny? Yesterday we were talking about calling, and we kind of prefaced that by saying vocation is doing work that relates to the voca, or listening to the voice. And so there were a lot of great ahas that happened in that conversation. And what happens for me in those spaces where I am challenged to think bigger, live to the edges, examine things that I maybe haven't thought about in those ways before, is that once my mind is expanded by a new thought, it can't regain its original dimension. So I take those ahas to the rest of my life. And while that group of people meets virtually, I live in a space in my community, in my physical location, where I can't unknow what I know. So the beauty of that is we meet every week, and we have the opportunity to come back each week and share what we've learned and what we've understood. Good morning, Rosemary. Happy birthday. I know it's your birthday today. It's fun to see people watching live. So yesterday, one of the foundations maybe for the conversation was the definition of calling that we were looking up. And the way we identified calling was a strong inner pull or sense of purpose that drives a person to pursue activities, work, or causes that align with their values, passions, and talents, and that bring them a deep sense of meaning and fulfillment. So when I think about that for me and I explore that, what is it that I feel in the flow about, or I feel so energized when I'm able to do it. And what I recognized for myself is it's anything that has to do with communication, true, deep, effective communication, gathering people, community, coming together, connecting people together or connecting people with resources, and then potentially collaboration, like getting together and collaborating on some project or some opportunity that I don't want to do by myself or I'm not the best at doing myself. And all of that is about invitation for me. It's about the invitation. It's not about whether people accept the invitation. It's about the inviting. And I recognize that over a lot of years. I've done a lot of work on myself, a lot of self-awareness. I really do believe that self-awareness is going to be the key to success, I suppose, in both business and personal fulfillment over the next few years and probably for the rest of my life. So as we think about these things and what it would mean to be in the space of a calling, one of the quotes that we examined a little bit was, or one of the thoughts maybe I could say, is a thought by Albert Einstein about how you see the world, how you're wired to see the world. And it's a long quote, so I'm going to read it and then we can talk about it a little bit more. So here's the quote by Albert Einstein. He says, "I think the most important question facing humanity is the universe a friendly place? This is the first and most basic question people must answer for themselves. For if we decide that the universe is an unfriendly place, then we will use our technology, our scientific discoveries, and our natural resources to achieve safety and power by creating bigger walls to keep out the unfriendliness and bigger weapons to destroy all that which is unfriendly. And I believe that we are getting to a place where technology is powerful enough that we may either completely isolate or destroy ourselves as well in this process." I don't know exactly what year this was, but 30s, let's say, 40s, I don't know. Then he went on to say, "If we decide that the universe is neither friendly nor unfriendly, and that God is essentially playing dice with the universe, then we are simply victims to the random toss of the dice, and our lives have no real purpose or meaning. But if we decide that the universe is a friendly place, then we will use our technology, our scientific discoveries, and our natural resources to create tools and models for understanding that universe. Because power and safety will come through understanding its workings and its motives. God does not play dice with the universe." So if that is the foundation through which you see the world, you decide, friendly, unfriendly, neutral, that will shape and color the way you see everything. And I believe that the universe is a friendly place. And so in that space of seeing the universe as friendly, I will use my awareness to, I was going to say to convince. It's not about convincing and it's not about even speaking that. It's about being that. So I will use that way of seeing the world to be that way. I don't feel the need to teach people something else. I don't feel the need to make myself right in any way. Nicole says, "Thus was the prophecy, which is being experienced now by the collective." I think you're right. And it's always been that way, Nicole. I think the awareness that we bring to our experience of living colors the way we live. Wayne Dyer used to say, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. And if you are looking for ways that people are mean to you, you'll find that everywhere. It's reticular activation. It has us see what we're looking for. And it's so easy to want to be right about that. And if we are only looking for ways to be right about what we already believe, there's no place for expansion or self-awareness because it doesn't matter. It's only about proving what I already know. And so my platform that I created in 2020, which this podcast is based on, is real, get real, radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. And when we break down all four of those, it ends up being a really cool personal development course because we spend, I have a 6-week course called the Real Me Intensive. And we really examine those things and we can break that down. And if we recognize that, let's say, I'll speak for myself, if I recognize that I'm learning focused, then I'm always looking for ways to learn and to expand and to grow and to experience life toward the edges, which means that my understanding, if it expands, I see things that I couldn't possibly see if I were only looking through a narrow lens. And that means that I learn things about people from different cultures. I learn things about people who have a different point of view, and I'm much less likely to judge that and more likely to be curious about it. If I don't get curious, I have a tendency to get furious. No, not maybe that's a little harsh, but it rhymes. So when I look at people and what they post on social media, for example, yesterday somebody posted a picture of something, which I'm not even going to address, but it was a statement about a judgment about someone. And I asked myself, why did that frustrate me? Because it frustrated me. It was a statement, a meme that said, this is the way it is. And then I made the mistake of going in and reading the comments and getting into that rabbit hole about all the people who agreed with this way of seeing the world, this statement that said, this is the way this is. And I thought, what is the point? So for me, it says, what frustrates you? And I wrote posts that declare, this is the way it is. That frustrates me, I guess. When people post something and say, blue is the best color, or, pick something, this is the way it is. That frustrates me. And then I asked why. Why does that frustrate me? Because to me, I wonder, what is the point? What is the point of posting something that says this is the way it is? And then I asked myself, why that? Why is that what it is? And for me, because those kinds of posts ask people not to think. They ask them to follow blindly. And what occurs to me, why this frustrates me and why this is important to me, is because I now see contrast. And I see, oh, not that. Okay, so not that. So then what? And the question would be for me, then what do I desire instead? So once I know what I don't want and I see why it frustrates and upsets me, then I can go, okay, what do I desire instead? And I desire instead opportunities to grow and expand and learn and be real. And that might mean I don't know what I don't know. I am willing to understand something differently. And what occurs to me in that space is that's not very many people necessarily, at least not in my experience. Nicole says expansion leads to transcendence. And then she gave me a compliment. Thank you, Nicole. I absolutely love how you lead, Jodee, speaking truth to power, living as the example. So if I am doing that, Nicole, in a way that reflects that back to you, it would be because you're looking for that, right? There are two ways of spreading light in the world. One is to be the candle, and one is to be the mirror that reflects it. And so if my calling, to go back to the original conversation here, is to live enlightened or be in a space of spreading light or being light by connecting, communicating, and collaborating, then thank you for recognizing that, Nicole, because you can't recognize it if you don't see it or if you're not looking for it yourself. And I think that kind of goes back to the point. When I recognize what frustrates me, I don't necessarily, I was going to make a statement that may not be true. I do get angry at first. I do. I get this little trigger, how dumb of you to put that down. That is just, why would you do that? I do. Initially, I see a post, I see a meme, and I go, that's so stupid. And then I go, wait a second. Wait a second. The person who posted that had a purpose for posting that. And in the study I'm doing about consciousness and awareness and seeing the world as the universe as a positive place, people are telling us every day who they are being and what they understand. So when someone is posting something that says, this is wrong, this is bad, this is stupid, and all these people are agreeing, and there's really no thought process in that, it's just showing us that in their state of consciousness as leaders of their lives, they are fighting to be right about something. And I've completely been there because I felt like I was wrong for so much of my life that I just wanted somebody to tell me I was right. But that's a level of unconsciousness, according to the book that I'm reading now, which is called the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leaders. I don't have it with me right now, but that book has really helped me understand things in a conscious and unconscious way. Not a judgment, just an awareness. And so when I recognize my calling, when I recognize what I'm here for, to shed light on things, I am really attracted to concepts like spiral dynamics, which I've talked about here before. This is the spiral dynamics, which I don't have to get into here, but it's levels of awareness, levels of consciousness, the 8-stage spiral of development. And I can see that and go, oh, okay, the behavior this person is exhibiting is pretty typical of this awareness, right? And when people are doing things in their lives, I have a different awareness myself, which allows me to be much less judgmental and much more curious. And that's not for everybody. I mean, that's not for everybody. In fact, it's not for a lot of people. I'm going to go back to this little awareness that has helped me. I'm going to put this up here on, I'll put it in the notes if you're listening on the podcast. But this is the law of diffusion of innovation. The I is 2.5% of the population. The EA, 13.5%. EM, 34%. LM, 34%. L, 16%. So it goes from innovators, the people who come up with the good ideas, very, very small slice, 2.5%. Early adopters get it quickly. They are adopted early. They're 13.5%. The early majority, 34%, will adopt a new idea once the early adopters have done that. The late majority, if they change their minds at all, it's very reluctantly. That's 34%. I got to get it back in focus here. And then the laggards are the 16% who probably will never change their mind. That, Everett Rogers, thank you for your work. And that really gave me such a great awareness, because the way I see the world is the way a very small slice sees the world. Melissa says, love this. Yes, because you're an early adopter, Melissa. You're in that space of 13.5%, which could be very frustrating for those of us who recognize ourselves there, because very few people are there. If you live in a smaller community, 13.5% is a smaller number. If you live in a bigger community, 13.5% is a bigger number. But the beauty of this global expansion opportunity we have through virtual connections and awarenesses is that 13.5% early adopter number grows exponentially when we recognize that energy is non-geographic. And we can connect with people all over the world who are in that space of curiosity over fear. Is furiosity a word? No. The people who want to be curious over furious. The people who understand, according to this, energy, vibration, and frequency. If we understand energy and how energy vibrates and the frequency at which energy vibrates, it would make sense that we attract to ourselves who we are, not what we want. We attract who we are. Because by its very definition, what we want is something we don't currently have. And the weird part about that is, if I want a new car, or I want to be healthier, or if I want new friends, I don't currently have them. So in my lack mentality, I'm attracting lack. And I'm attracting ways to be right about what I don't have. And that's unconscious behavior. It's weird. It's paradoxical, but it's so, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once your mind is expanded by a new thought, it can't regain its original dimensions. And that is fascinating for leadership, for we who are willing to go first. Melissa says, so frustrating, had so many examples from today alone. Virtual connection folks understand, and it's a great place to connect with those that can relate. So virtual is an option. Instead of being upset about how you can't find your people locally, or you don't feel like you fit in, or all of those things that will make you right because you're fighting to be right, which is an unconscious behavior, instead of being open to learning, you will always be right about how nobody shows up. There's nobody here. I'm going to be right about that because I am fighting for my limitations. If you can give up the need to be right about things, I believe, at least for me, that's the key to having new awarenesses come to me. I attract who I am, not what I want. Does that make sense? What I want is something I don't currently have. So how could I attract it to me if I only want it? I have to shift my thinking into the awareness that shows me what I already have. And then I will be able to attract that awareness. These aren't easy conversations, and they're not for everyone. I mean, people are not going to relate to this. The frequency, the energy, the vibration of a conversation like this is not for everyone because, in my experience, it's the early adopters who get this. Early adopters are only 13.5%. I used to believe I needed to wake everybody up. Everybody in the world should be in this conversation with me. Oh my gosh, that's why my life has been so difficult for so long. I was just talking to a friend at coffee this morning, and I said, COVID was really good for me when everything shut down because it forced me to take a look at what I needed to shift, what I really wanted to be aware of, and what I wanted to notice. And by the way, I'm just looking up at the clock right now, and at the time I'm recording this, it's now 11:11. And that's how things kind of show up for me in my awareness. They've been there the whole time, but I notice the clock now. The clock will be 11:11 again in 12 hours, but I may not notice it because I may not be in the space of alignment. So all of this kind of came from our conversation yesterday in the Enlightened Leadership Lab, where we started talking about calling. How do you see the world? Do you see it as a friendly place or an unfriendly place? We talked about this quote as well. Your work is to discover your work, and then with all your heart to give yourself to it. So your work is to discover your work, and then with all your heart to give yourself to it. So if that's your calling, what are you here to give your life to? What are you here? What are your unique characteristics? You, yourself. What is it about you that the world needs? Another quote we talked about yesterday was Frederick Buechner's. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. And when you recognize that, recognize, see it again, you already knew this at some point. And when you recognize it, it'll be like coming home to yourself. Nicole, that's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, Nicole, it is absolutely beautiful because we are created for that. That's the point. Because I see the world as a friendly place, that's the point for me. And that will not resonate with most of the population. And that's why sometimes it can get frustrating to try to hold that space when it feels like others are running from it. But once we know what we know, we can't unknow it. So spending time in that space where your calling can be exposed to you, can be you can be enlightened to that space. I can't not do that. I know I'm an English major, double negative there. I can't not be in that space anymore. When I'm in the Enlightened Leadership Lab on Mondays, I become someone to whom everything I desire can't help but be attracted, because I become somebody who is something different. I don't necessarily want things that I used to want, because I'm becoming somebody to whom all of these awarenesses can't help but be attracted. And in that space, when I speak my truth, or as you said earlier, Nicole, speaking truth, I think it was you, speak truth to power. Speak truth to power. Speak truth to bullshit, I talked about last week, but be civil. And when we can do that together in a group, in a space where other like-minded and like-hearted others gather, it doesn't feel like such a solo journey. It doesn't feel like such a heavy lift. It doesn't have to feel like you're Atlas with the world on your shoulders. Melissa says, I cannot help to acknowledge how much you've helped me, Jodee. Oh, thank you, Melissa. Thankful for you, and I will continue to be grateful. Well, if you look back on your life and you see these places where you've attracted to yourself the forces you wish to use and the cooperation of other people, when you recognize that you've done that, we have attracted to ourselves the forces we wish to use, forces, not people, the forces we wish to use, and the cooperation of other people, we can't help but be expansive. And that's where our organizations will start shifting. That's where people will start seeing that leaders who are leading enlightened, who are being conscious leaders, who are recognizing, seeing again, that their humans are more important than their resources. You know, we call it human resources, but we tend to get a little heavy on the resource side and maybe a little light on the human side in some cases. What if we poured as much energy and time and frequency and vibration into our humans, and we allowed our humans to be curious so they didn't have so much need to be furious? And if they get curious over furious, they will ask questions like, what is this here to teach me? What else could this mean? When I saw that meme and I was mad initially yesterday and I was like, I hate it when people do that, I had to ask myself, why? What is it about that triggers me, that has me look at myself and be less than I want to be a different person than I truly want to be? And I told myself, or I recognized for myself, it was because that helps people avoid thinking. Those declarations don't ask people to think for themselves. They seem to ask people to follow blindly. I could be wrong about that, but that was my rationale. And that had me say, this is why I want to gather with others who are thinking about things, who are pondering things. I gave this out at our chill out event. This is a little notebook I call the Wonder Ponder notebook. And it's a thin, tall notebook, because in this, I hope people will put things that they're wondering about. I wonder about that. Because instead of getting in the space of wonder, we tend to get into the space of anger. And yesterday when I had that post hit me, I was maybe angry for a second. And then I went, I wonder. Okay, let me wonder. And I had to write it out. I wonder. And as I wonder things, I write them down and then I can ponder it. Because awarenesses might not come to me immediately. And if they do, insights can happen in an instant. But transformation, taking that insight and then putting it to practice, can take longer. So if we don't do anything with our insights, we just have the insight and go, oh, that was cool, and then we go back to doing our lives the way we've always done them, they will make no difference. Insight without action makes no difference. So what is it I'm willing to do with the insights I'm having? For me, it's having conversations that reinforce them. It's getting other perspectives. It's learning from someone who says, Jodee, that's a stupid idea. Okay, tell me more. Tell me more. Be honest with me. Tell me what you see. Because in that space, I can reform, like think differently about the way it came out of my mouth and go, oh, yeah. I see how that could have come across. I want to redo that. Let me try that again. In a space where I feel safe to explore and to verbally process without having somebody take a little clip of it and say, Jodee said blah, 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 because that's what we tend to do when we are unconsciously leading. We want to be right over learning, right? If you start looking at this, you're going to see this everywhere. This is why media takes little clips and they will take something that somebody said, but they'll take it out of context because that's what sells. I'm on to you all, media. I'm on to you, right? I get it. I get why you're doing that. I get follow the money. I get all that stuff. I'm not falling for that anymore. I'm not judging it. I'm just not falling for it. I'm going to look deeper. I'm going to do what I can to find the truth, the facts. Not an easy job, but it's worth it to me, especially since I know my calling. I know what I'm here to do. It's to connect, communicate, collaborate, to share my truth in a way that doesn't harm other people. It may challenge other people, but I'm not interested in harming humans. So I will do the best I can. I will mess up. But if I know that I have others in my circle like you who are here listening live or later, together we can do so much more than any of us can do on our own. So it may be slower to go together, but it's so much more fulfilling, at least for me. So if you'd like more information about the Enlightened Leadership Lab, we meet on Mondays from 3 to 4:30, and it's virtual, and it's every Monday. You can go to enlightenedleadershiplab.com. I think that's the place where I'm kind of using as a lab for me personally to formulate some of these thoughts, some of these ideas. It's facilitated by Chris Angel and me. It's not mandated, and it's not it's different. I don't even know how else to tell you about it. There are no agendas. There are only topics and very emergent conversations, which I'm not sure where else to find that in my life. So if you're interested in that, take a look. And there's a lot of other opportunities if you just start looking for what you do want. Once your eyes are opened and once you see things differently and you recognize how often you might have tried to be right over being open, you can't unknow that. So watch for that. And I hope to connect with you again. So as always, everybody, get real. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you again. Bye.